Death didn't just come for her. It literally broke into her home. Sharon Tate was a young and dazzling, beautiful actress whom Hollywood had crowned its next big star. Her life seemed like a dream, a rapidly growing career, a successful and wealthy husband, and the promise of motherhood ahead. But on one fateful night, that idyllic life was shattered at the doorstep of her own home. A knock in the silence became the prelude to one of the most shocking tragedies in American history. This is the story of Sharon Tate's happy life, but with a tragic ending. On January 24th, 1943, in Dallas, Texas, a baby girl was born whose life promised to be as brilliant as it was unstable. Sharon Tate came into a family full of love, but one where stability was a luxury that couldn't afford due to circumstances. Her father, a U.S. Army officer, set the rhythm of the family's life, a rhythm of constant relocations and new beginnings. From her earliest days, Sharon was forced to adapt to changes that repeatedly pulled the ground from under her feet. Moving houses, new faces, a new home, this became her norm. While her childhood might have seemed perfect at first glance, behind the facade lay an ongoing struggle with feelings of loneliness. Sharon's father, Paul Tate, was a strict and disciplined man, qualities essential for survival in the military. He saw it as his duty to raise children who were resilient and prepared for anything. However, his methods often clashed with young Sharon's nature, which leaned toward dreaminess and gentleness. Her mother, Doris Tate, provided a counterbalance. Her love and care were unconditional. Yet at times, the strictness of her maternal rules left Sharon with little room for self-expression. She was like a bird in a gilded cage, surrounded by care but still confined. The Tate family's life resembled a constant loop, dozens of new homes and dozens of new schools. From Texas to Washington and then to Italy and other corners of Europe, their moves were relentless. For Sharon, these relocations were more than just geographic changes. They were an ongoing challenge to rediscover herself. Each time she lost not only friends, but also pieces of her confidence in the future. Even as a baby, Sharon Tate amazed everyone with her extraordinary beauty. Her photos captivated all who saw them, and her parents proudly spoke of her angelic appearance. Yet behind the outward glow lay another reality. Sharon felt her beauty not only opened doors, but also created barriers. Many saw her merely as a pretty face rather than a person, making her relationship superficial. Instead of being a source of joy, her attractiveness often led to loneliness. Classmates alternated between envy and dismissiveness, assuming there was no depth behind her looks. The military life still continued to leave its mark. Each move brought a new school where Sharon became the perpetual newcomer. Her beauty drew attention, but language barriers, especially in Italy, heightened her isolation. She often felt like a guest who never had the chance to truly belong. From a young age, Sharon dreamed of the stage. Her early performances in school plays were a breath of fresh air. On stage, she could be herself, even if her dreams seemed trivial to those around her. Her parents were her main source of support. In the absence of deep friendship, Sharon found comfort and encouragement within her family. Her bond with her mother was especially strong. Although strict, Doris was always her greatest ally. In high school, Sharon began taking her first steps toward recognition. Participating in beauty pageants earned her titles and attention. These small victories sparked a sense of belief in her abilities. On the stage of her school theater, Sharon felt alive, but even there, her looks became an obstacle. Audiences saw her as a beautiful girl without considering her talent. This created internal conflicts for Sharon. How could she prove she was capable of more than just being a pretty face? Living in Italy became a pivotal chapter for Sharon. Surrounded by picturesque landscapes, ancient streets, and a culture steeped in romance, she began to recognize her own allure. It was there amidst the unfamiliar environment and a new language that she experienced her first tender feelings. During her final years in high school, Sharon entered her first serious relationship with a young American. This romance became a bright spot amid her nomadic life. For the first time, she felt she didn't need to pretend or adapt. She could simply be herself. But like so much in her life, this happiness was fleeting. Another relocation cut the romance short just as it was beginning to blossom. For Sharon, this was a bitter lesson. Her life seemed programmed for goodbyes. Every new connection or relationship came with a looming thought of inevitable separation. Her appearance consistently drew attention. Sharon was the kind of girl everyone turned to look at, but behind the admiring glances often lay superficiality. Men sought her out for her ideal looks without attempting to delve deeper. Sharon, however, dreamed of being understood as a person, loved for her soul and inner world. Yet her gentleness and desire to please often worked against her, trapping her in the allure of her own charm. She had to fight for the right to be seen as more than just a beauty. The 1960s marked a time of new horizons for Sharon Tate. After returning to the United States, her family settled in Los Angeles, a city where dreams either flourish or burn out in the glow of Hollywood. For Sharon, it was a chance to start anew. Her beauty, now her calling card, immediately caught the attention of casting directors. Sharon actively attended auditions and almost instantly won the favor of producers. But Los Angeles wasn't just a city of dreamers, it was a world of predators, where her sincerity often became a vulnerability. Sharon began her journey in the modeling industry, quickly achieving success. Her angelic looks and natural charm made her a star of advertising campaigns, with magazine covers featuring her face drawing public attention almost instantly. However, for Sharon, this wasn't enough. She didn't want to just be a pretty image. Hollywood saw her as a decorative actress, someone who could enhance a scene visually but little else. Sharon, on the other hand, dreamed of complex roles that would allow her to explore emotional depth and showcase her talent. This mismatch between her aspirations and how the industry perceived her caused her pain, forcing her to fight for recognition. Sharon soon became part of Los Angeles' high society, mingling with directors, producers, and celebrities. Her kindness and sincerity set her apart in a world often dominated by the artificiality of social life. While this attracted many people to her, it also left her vulnerable. Some in her circle described her as naive, claiming she believed too much in goodness and overlooked the games everyone else was playing. This sparked mixed reactions. Some admired her purity, while others saw it as an opportunity for manipulation. Sharon was like a bright star in Hollywood's sky, but her light concealed inner doubts and a struggle to stay true to herself in a world governed by the rules of outward glamour. Like many aspiring actresses in Hollywood, Sharon Tate encountered a world where connections often open more doors than talent. Her first film roles were largely the result of the mentorship of a director who immediately recognized her star potential. While their collaboration was purely professional, the press quickly seized on rumors of a romantic relationship. For Sharon, such gossip was the first blow to her reputation. Instead of focusing on her acting, people speculated that her success was built on her looks and connections. This cast doubt on her aspirations to be recognized not only for her beauty but for her talent. She wanted her performances to speak for themselves, but Hollywood continued to see her as merely a beautiful face. Sharon quickly discovered the darker side of the film industry, hidden behind the bright lights of studio lots. Pressure from producers, insinuations of favors, and lingering gazes became part of her daily reality. She often felt like a commodity, valued only for her physical appearance. For a young woman with a kind and open heart, this was especially painful. She wasn't prepared for a world where her sincerity was seen as a weakness. Despite her gentle nature, Sharon learned to stand up for herself. She began to set boundaries and assert her right to be respected and heard. This was a difficult but essential lesson that allowed her to maintain her dignity in an environment where it could so easily be lost. Sharon Tate began her acting career with small roles in popular TV series such as Mr. Ed and the Beverly Hillbillies. While her involvement in these projects might have seemed modest, her on-screen charisma immediately made her stand out among her peers. Although many dismissed her early success as solely due to her look, Sharon took her craft seriously. She attended acting classes and worked tirelessly to ensure performances were as compelling as her appearance. These small steps hinted at something greater, the first sparks of a future star. The turning point for Sharon came with her role in Valley of the Dolls, where she portrayed Jennifer North, an actress whose life ended tragically. This role struck a chord with Sharon. Like her character, she struggled to be recognized for more than just her beauty. The film became a commercial hit, though critics were less enthusiastic. Nevertheless, Sharon received her first recognition for her acting skills. Despite this, the public and media continued to focus more on her image as a beautiful star, rather than acknowledging her talent. This duality of success and frustration marked a bittersweet moment in her career. Sharon's role in Roman Polanski's gothic comedy The Fearless Vampire Killers marked a new stage in her career. She played the lead female character, showcasing her ability to portray not only beautiful ladies, but also comedic roles. This performance surprised her fans and allowed critics to see her in a new light. Sharon demonstrated her skill in blending drama and humor, breaking free from the typical role she'd been cast in before. Sharon became more than just an actress, she became a symbol of the era. Her photographs graced the covers of the most prominent magazines, and her style inspired women around the world. Her appearance combined natural beauty and sophistication, perfectly capturing the essence of the 1960s. Her image was everywhere, on advertising posters, fashion magazine covers, and even in the hearts of her fans. She embodied freedom, freshness, and boldness, the qualities that defined the spirit of the time. The filming of The Fearless Vampire Killers marked not only a professional milestone for Sharon, but also a personal one. It was on this set that she met Roman Polanski, a talented and eccentric director. Their romance developed rapidly. Both were young, ambitious, and seemingly perfect for each other. Polanski saw Sharon not just as a beautiful woman, but as his muse. She inspired him as a filmmaker, and in turn, he supported her career, opening new doors for her. However, their relationship was far from ideal. Roman became not only Sharon's husband, but also, in a way, the director of her life. He wanted her to conform to his vision of the ideal woman, from the role she chose to her lifestyle. His demeaning nature and desire for control sometimes caused friction between them. In 1968, Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski were married in a wedding that became one of the year's most talked about events. The young couple embodied Hollywood's glamour and romance, with their union gracing the front pages of newspapers. It seemed like their lives were perfect, thriving careers, a dazzling social presence, and widespread admiration. But behind the glaring facade lay a different reality. Sharon deeply loved Roman, but increasingly felt alone. Polanski, consumed by his work, spent more time on film sets than with his wife. His obsession with his craft left little room for family life. Adding to this lack of attention were persistent rumors surrounding Polanski. Talk of his infidelity weighed heavily on Sharon, creating an emotional burden. Her love for him remained steadfast, but the frequent moments of solitude made her feel abandoned in a world full of people. For Sharon, the marriage was both the source of inspiration and pain. She struggled to balance her dreams, her desire for fulfilling family life, and an ever-growing sense of inner emptiness. While the spark of love still shone in her eyes, a quiet loneliness grew within her, one she rarely spoke about aloud. By the mid-1960s, Sharon had become a true symbol of her time. Her style, grace, and natural beauty inspired millions. She was often referred to as the new Marilyn Monroe, embodying not just the glamour, but also the underlying tragedy of her era. The comparisons to Monroe were flattering, but for Sharon, they served as yet another reminder that she was often seen more as an image than as a person. Beneath the mask of confidence was a woman struggling with the lack of recognition for her talent and individuality. The year 1969 brought new hopes for Sharon. She stood on the brink of the most significant event in her life, the birth of her first child. Together with Roman Polanski, she dreamed of creating a warm and loving home filled with the laughter of children, a sanctuary where their family could find happiness. In the 9th month of her pregnancy, Sharon was filled with joy and love. She eagerly awaited the moment she could hold her baby in her arms. But then came that fateful evening. On August 8, 1969, Sharon Tate, 9 months pregnant, chose to spend the evening with close friends. Her home on Celio Drive, nestled in the quiet hills of Beverly, seemed like a safe haven, a place where she could enjoy peace and anticipate the joyful arrival of her child. Sharon dreamed of a life that would soon be filled with new meaning through motherhood. But that night, those dreams turned into a nightmare. While Roman Polanski was abroad, members of Charles Manson's cult broke into the house. In the early hours of August 9th, the intruders unleashed one of the most brutal acts of violence in Hollywood history. The murder of Sharon and her guests shocked the world with its unimaginable savagery. Sharon pleaded with her attackers to spare her life for the sake of her unborn child. Her desperate pleas, filled with hope and anguish, fell on deaf ears. The Manson cult members showed neither compassion nor mercy. That night, 5 people lost their lives. Sharon Tate, her friends Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Fraszkowski, and Stephen Parent, as well as Sharon's unborn baby. This tragedy forever changed Hollywood. Sharon's death was not only a devastating loss for her family, but also a profound shock to society at large. Who killed her and why? The perpetrators were followers of Charles Manson, a charismatic yet deranged cult leader. Manson manipulated his followers into believing that his twisted ideology, known as helter-skelter, justified the murders. His delusional belief that these acts would spark a racial war led to the horrifying events on Celio Drive. Sharon and her friends were chosen as victims not for their personal reasons, but as symbols of Manson's chaotic agenda. Charles Manson was born in 1934 into a troubled family where chaos and criminality were the norm. His childhood was marked by neglect and violence, likely shaping his manipulative nature and desire for control. His youth was spent behind bars, cycling through various prisons where he learned not just survival, but also methods of influencing others. By the late 1960s, Manson had formed a cult that became known as the Manson family. At that time, California was the epicenter of the hippie movement, freedom, and revolutionary ideas. With his hypnotic charisma, Manson exploited the vulnerabilities of young people seeking spiritual guidance. He preached a mixture of his interpretations of religion, music, and an apocalyptic ideology, inspired by his helter-skelter theory, a supposed racial war in which the family would emerge as saviors. To his followers, these ideas seemed like revelations, though in reality they were the product of Manson's disturbed mind. The Manson cult was comprised of primarily young women who saw him not just as a man, but as a messiah. Many of these women came from troubled backgrounds, were vulnerable, and sought refuge in a world filled with chaos. They regarded his words as absolute truth and his desires as ultimate commands. The Manson family embodied aspects of hippie culture, free love, communes, and drug use, combined with disturbing violence and an ideology that glorified brutality. Manson manipulated his followers, using them as tools to carry out heinous acts, including murder. These individuals, who outwardly appeared peaceful and kind, became instruments in the hands of a man who convinced them of his divine mission. The most horrifying aspect was their willingness to commit murder in the name of what they believed to be a higher purpose. After the series of gruesome murders, including the attack on Sharon Tate's home, the members of the Manson family continued to live in their commune as if nothing had happened. They carried on with their usual way of life, hiding from the outside world, but their freedom was short-lived. A breakthrough in the case came thanks to Susan Atkins, one of the cult's most active members. While in jail, she confessed to her cellmate about her involvement in the murders and detailed the family's role in the horrific events. Her confession became the starting point for the investigators. By connecting Atkins' statements with other evidence, police linked the murder of Sharon Tate and her guests to the attack on the Lee Bianca family, which occurred shortly after the tragedy on Cielo Drive. This investigation led to the arrest of Charles Manson and his followers. The trial of Charles Manson and his cult members became one of the most high-profile cases in U.S. history. It was not merely a murder trial. It unveiled the horrifying world of manipulation and violence that existed at the core of the late 1960s hippie counterculture. During the trial, Charles Manson behaved provocatively. He interrupted the judges, staged theatrical outbursts, and flaunted his control over his followers. His antics shocked the public and deepened the sense of horror surrounding the case. Manson followers also displayed unwavering loyalty to their leader, which served as a chilling reminder of the power he held over them. In 1971, Charles Manson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Kruenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten were sentenced to death. However, just a year later, California abolished the death penalty, and their sentences were commuted to life imprisonment. The death of Sharon Tate was not just a tragedy, but also a catalyst for societal change. A decade later, her mother, Doris Tate, resolved to fight for justice, becoming a voice for millions of families who endured the pain and loss. Doris launched a campaign to prevent the parole of those sentenced to life imprisonment for the attack on Sharon and her friends. Her efforts highlighted the flaws in California's justice system, initiating a broader movement that led to significant changes in the law. The culmination of her work was the passage of amendments to California's criminal code. These changes granted crime victims and their families the right to deliver a victim impact statement during sentencing and parole hearings. Doris Tate was the first to exercise this right, speaking at the parole hearing of one of Sharon's killers, Tex Watson. Her testimony not only helped prevent his release, but also became a symbol of resistance against impunity. According to Doris, these changes allowed her to restore her daughter's lost honor and dignity. For her, it was not merely a legal victory, but a way to preserve Sharon's memory as a person whose life was unjustly cut short. Sharon Tate became more than just a victim. She became a symbol of the fight for the rights of all crime victims.